SHALAWAM, YAHAWAH. This is Pastor Jerry Carter III. And I just want to say BERKELEY, YAHAWAH, SHAM, YAHWAH, YAQA, dabarhaqadash. ALAHYAM. We thank you for allowing us to come back together one more time, worship you in the beauty of holiness, and also to bring some more conscious awareness to us and give us the understanding that it's time to separate from the work and the workers of evil. We ask you that you heal, touch, and deliver our people, save them, sanctify them, fill them up with BERKELEY. SHALAWAM. Let me thank you at this time. Each and every one of you who subscribe, each and every one of you that are at gates of heaven, Quahal, Hasharayim, Shemayim, Quahal, Gates of Heaven congregation. We thank you all for subscribing, liking, paying attention to these lessons and podcasts that are being posted. At this time, I just want to reference with you. We have a pandemic that is called COVID-19, but we also have a pandemic that is called jumping into different races. We have a pandemic that is called artificial perception. Okay? Artificial perception. You see right here on the screen, Donald Trump says, we have it so well under control, view this the same as the flu. That's artificial perception. Okay? His perception, as well as his cabinet's perception, as well as these elites' perception. Their perception is, as long as the people on the bottom, as long as Negroes are dying, as long as the so-called poor and impoverished are dying, then it's well under control, because it has not touched them as of yet. But I want you to know something, that there is a very, very heavy agenda that has been covered up for a long time to cover up the radiation poisoning that is taking place. There's a heavy blanket of radiation poisoning that's taking place with your mobile devices. There's a heavy blanket of identity theft that is taking place, especially with this race jumping behavior. People want to be in public to draw attention to. They want to be black. They want to look like a Negro. They want to look like a Hebrew Israelite, but they want to label us, put us on the Southern Poverty Law Center as a hate group. They want to make mockery. They want to, put the monkey doctrine out there. They want to slander and do all these proverbs and bywords against us. But it's entitled, according to the Trump administration, is well under control. Treat it the same as the flu. View this as a flu. People die from the flu. Thousands, over 100,000 people die per year from the flu. COVID-19 is just a more advanced version of it. So the reason why I have him on this screen, because I want you to understand, y'all have to stop, stop following this nonsense, man. Stop believing these people. Okay? Be your own man. Be your own lady. All right? Get out of the lines of these nail salons. Get out of the lines of these hair salons. All right? If that hairstylist is not your own people, don't bother. If that pedicurist or cosmetologist is doing pedicures and manicures, if they're not your own people, then don't even get in the line. And it's that simple. It really is. One thing that you gotta strengthen yourselves in is self-will. We have a lot of our own people that have the self-will to fight one another, the self-will to attack one another. Right now there's a campaign. Someone of our own people. We got traitors and all that among our own people that are well invested into antagonizing and destroying their own.
There are a lot of important questions to be asked about mobile phone radiation today, without any doubt. But the reality is we're not asking those questions. And with the exception of some researchers here and elsewhere, very little new research is being done in this field. So it's a thrill to be here because Australia has been a leader in research in the field of electrical engineering and its applications to medicine, doing some of the most exciting work in the world and funded by institutions around the world, including the US Department of Defense. And I've worked at some of the top institutions in the world in science, and so when I first thought there could be something wrong with mobile phones, I actually owned 3 phones at the time. I own 2 now. And everybody has to downsize a bit. And I didn't believe there was a problem, and I thought if there were a problem, I would know about it because, of course, I knew all about what was important in science. Well, I was wrong. I liked the fact that I could call people or actually send them messages and expect an answer at all hours of the day, and found it kind of fun in the beginning. And when somebody said to me there could be a problem with this with our health, I said, oh, don't be ridiculous. If there was a problem, I'd know about it. Well, I was wrong. And what I now know is that information is being sent to people routinely to give them safety information. I'm going to ask you to help me out here by looking at how many of you have an iPhone. Now, I assume you didn't all turn them off. So, for those of you who have an iPhone, would you nod, raise your hand again? I'd like you to share with your colleagues. So please go to the settings on your phone, all right? Please take a moment and nod when you've got there. All right? And be prepared to share, all right? Go to settings on the phone. Got there? All right. Now, get to settings. Now go to about. I'm sorry, you have to go to general first. There's a mistake here. You have to go to general. All right? Under general, under settings. Then go to about, which is at the top. You got there? About, yes? Okay. Now you have to scroll all the way down to something you don't normally see, called legal. You got to legal? All right. Now click on RF exposure. Now you can read it later, but it's basically telling you that you need to know that you cannot keep the phone directly next to your body without exceeding the as-tested exposure guidelines. And by the way, the iPhone does it. I happen to know how to find it on the iPhone. I'm just learning the Android system myself. But all smartphones come with some information that basically says, don't keep the phone in your pocket or you will exceed the as-tested exposure guidelines. Now, how many of you knew that before today? Well, this is a very well-informed audience relative to others. I want to thank Telstra because they actually are now giving people this information. And by the way, they're one of the first telecom companies in the world to do this. So I actually think it's a good thing. They're sending this message. How many of you have seen it? How many of you have actually looked at what it said? Well, here's what it says. This is what it says. And like most of you, I found messages like this annoying, but the reality is Telstra is telling you to use a hands-free device to keep a mobile phone away from the head and body to reduce mobile phone exposure. So that's a good thing. But on the other hand, I think that we all need to do better to give people information so that you have knowledge about how to reduce exposure. And I'm going to explain to you why we need to reduce exposure. Let's go back to almost 20 years ago when standards for cell phones were first set up. At that time, it was believed that the only thing you had to worry about was avoiding heat. That was the only effect you had to be concerned about. And so they employed the head of a very large person, a 220-pound male, who was at the top 98th percentile of military recruits in 1989 in the United States. And they set the standards to avoid heating up that fellow's brain after a 6-minute phone call. Now, there's probably 1 or 2 people in this room with a head that size. But the rest of you, like most of the world, have much smaller heads and relatively smaller bodies. And this standard, which is very much out of date, doesn't take into account the fact that people the size of these 2 bright young people here in the front row are using these devices today with no thought that maybe they're getting exposed to levels of radiation that have not been evaluated for their safety in young developing brains. Now, the electromagnetic spectrum, this is information from ARPANSA, actually goes all the way from the invisible to the visible, ionizing radiation, gamma rays, X-rays over here, and light here. This is from ARPANSA. You will see here they say FM radio, microwave oven, radiant heat. Of course, microwave oven actually happens to be of the same frequency as the cell phone, the mobile phone. The mobile phone and the microwave oven use a very similar frequency. The difference between them is power. The power of the microwave oven is 1,000 watts. And of course, that's power that can heat up a cup of water in maybe 60 seconds. The microwave oven, the mobile phone, the cordless phone, the Wi-Fi monitor, the baby monitor, they all use the same frequency. They differ in power. They also differ because mobile phones and Wi-Fi devices emit pulsed microwave radiation. It's the pulse, not the power, that appears to be biologically most important. The pulse that is erratic and irregular, like for thousands of minutes a month, for dozens of hours a week, over a lifetime, that irregular pulsed signal may be much more biologically important. And in fact, the continuous wave signals have a lot of therapeutic effects as are being applied in medicine today. This visualization from my colleague at the University of Athens shows you the variation in frequency, in amplitude, in pulse. All of these variables influence the properties a signal have and how it can affect a biological system. This is just to show you what happens in a 4-second mobile phone call. This is power density indicated here. And of course, a phone is on standby, it's not doing too much, but 900 times a minute it's looking for a signal. It says to the tower, where are you? Here I am. Where are you? Here I am. It's smart. That's how it's supposed to do. Now, when the phone rings, the worst time for you to put a phone right next to your head is when you answer it and say hello, because it's smart and it goes to max power. They're programmed to do that. Max power. Now, it's going to go to max power. You're going to listen, and then it will go up and down and up and down. And again, it's that variation. It's the delta. It's the cumulative integrative dose under the curve over a lifetime of exposure that looks to be biologically important. Now, exposure is a kind of funny thing. There's a rather widely distributed paper by Ken Foster and C.K. Cho that said that the exposure of an adult and the exposure of a child is identical, and therefore there's no real difference in how the radiation might be affecting them. Well, let me explain something by showing off my daughter and my granddaughter. My granddaughter is a very light-skinned, red-haired, blue-eyed child. Her skin is very sensitive. My daughter is darker-haired like I am. If they have sunscreen on, they still will get a different dose of ultraviolet light, even though they have the same exposure. Because the exposure may be uniform, but the amount they will absorb differs because the properties of the skin, the property of the eye, the thinness of the skin, and a number of other variables. And those same things are relevant when it comes to thinking about cell phone radiation. Now, way back in the dark ages, when the standards were developed, two-dimensional modeling showed that children and smaller adults might absorb more radiation than larger adults. And this was scalar modeling that has now been superseded, done by Om Gandhi in 1996. Interestingly, and this is why I'm really delighted to be here, Dean, when he did this work in 1996, he was working with support from Motorola and the Department of Defense. And after he published this, he lost all his funding. That's why I'm really happy when you told me that Australia is not America. Because I think you have an opportunity to do something here in this great country. You have a tradition of independence in science and in this country that we do not have, unfortunately, on this issue in the United States. So Professor Gandhi, with whom I'm collaborating now, updated his work in 2002, here showing you that a smaller adult head here, you see the amount of exposure is quite similar, but because the head is smaller, it will absorb proportionally more. More recently, we have been working with colleagues at Porto Alegre with Environmental Health Trust, and we have developed three-dimensional modeling with anatomically based models using MRI to create the models with 1 millimeter voxels. And what we have done is to show the difference in radiation dose in heads of different ages and sizes. And I'll just show you one example here, coming from our colleagues at the Swiss National Institute of Technology, the ITIS, which have produced some of the most brilliant work in the world in this field. And they have shown here, of course, that there is going to be greater exposure, absorption into a younger head versus an older head. This is another item from their website of target tissue dose for the infant with using a system called the virtual family. Is there anyone here who's worked on the virtual family? Right. It's a really powerful and very sophisticated system that is used today to set standards for medical devices and surgical procedures, but it's not used for mobile phone standards. I find that odd. And I want to show you an example of some of the work that we are doing now that I'm releasing here for the first time. And this is a modeled microwave radiation dose of a 6-year-old with greater levels to the frontal and temporal lobes, eyes and cheek. And watch this here. Now, yellow, white, and red are the hottest, all right? And if you look carefully, you will see it's going into the eye, the nose. Do it again, just so you'll get to see it. And partly into the brainstem. Now, that's just showing you that there's going to be some exposure into that area of a young head. It doesn't tell you that there's any biological effect, right? Now, the next slide is going to show you something that might be of interest to students and faculty here. And that has to do with exposure to the reproductive organs. We call them the gonads, I think you say the testicles, and bone marrow. And look here at the radiation as it gets into the groin area. And that's just from having a mobile phone modeled into the pocket. And this, again, is based on normalized SAR with a dipole antenna. And there are many different variables you can alter in coming up with this kind of simulation, right? The number of antenna, whether it's GSM, CDMA, whether it's simultaneously operating only one antenna or more than one. But we believe that this is the kind of work that needs to be done and that this institution might be in a position to do it. And my colleagues from Brazil would be happy to share with you the modeling that we have done to date to generate this. But based on this work and other studies that have been done around the world, the United States magazine Consumer Reports recently recommended that nobody keep a phone in their pocket. Nobody. And in fact, if phones were tested in pockets, they would exceed the as-tested exposure guidelines, which is why Telstra has recently issued that advice. Now, when it comes to pregnancy, we're working with Yale University and more than 100 physicians and experts in the United States and around the world who are specialists in pregnancy. And we have been modeling exposure to the head at the end of pregnancy. And at the end of pregnancy, when of course the head, as any woman here knows, is right at the surface, if you're lucky it's at the surface and it's not facing the spine, then you can get the greatest exposure because of course the skin is completely permeable to this radiation exposure. And that's why we've developed the Baby Safe project with colleagues at Yale to advise pregnant women to protect their abdomens from mobile phone radiation, as well as from iPads, which I should add, iPads and other devices are called tablets because they belong on tables. They are tested 20 centimeters away from that big guy that I showed you before. 20 centimeters away. They are not approved to be held in the laps of little children, although millions of kids are having them now in schools because the people involved in educational technology and those involved in public health research are not talking to one another. Because if they were, they would understand that you're giving children a two-way microwave radiating device, and if you must give them such a device for learning purposes, put it on airplane mode so that it's not sending and receiving signals as it does otherwise. Now, this is some new modeling, again, that we've developed with colleagues in Brazil, and we can share with you how we've done it. We first start out with the MRI and create the model with 1 millimeter voxels, and this is quite a bit of work goes into creating this, and here is what it looks like after a period of 6 minutes. That's really not as bad as it might look because you see the red area only gets partway through the eye of the adult, right? The one that we're really concerned about is this one with the young child. And this is a 3-year-old brain that we modeled. And you see that by the end of that 6-minute call, the peak radiation, yellow and red, is getting all the way into almost both eyes. And again, this is one call, and it's not going to kill anybody. It may not cause any biological effect whatsoever for 1 call or 2 calls or 3 calls. But the question is, what's the cumulative impact of this kind of exposure? How do we evaluate it? How do we study it? The problem we face is that right now, we're in the midst of an experiment on my grandchildren and your children, and we don't have anybody to compare them with. We don't have a control group in science. When you are given a drug, it's usually been studied where some people get the drug and some people don't get the drug, and they're called the controls. And then you see whether or not those who got the drug are healthier than those who did not. And when you get results, you can conclude if there is a difference between the exposed and the control group, that your drug has worked. Well, when it comes to mobile phone radiation, we've lost our ability to have a true control group. Even now with young children, more than half of young children today have access to these devices. And I read this morning in the Age that something like 13% of children age 2 can order their own apps. I mean, I find it hard to imagine how a parent would give a child age 2 a device which was allowing them to order their own app. So, where are we with respect to research on infants, toddlers, and young children and pregnancy? Well, there's almost no research underway, which again is why I'm delighted to be here to talk with you about what could be developed. Believe it or not, this is the iPotty. Now, this is not a joke. I have actually talked to grandmothers, I'm one of them. My grandchildren did not have an iPotty, I promise you. Their father sometimes acts like he did.
AT&T is the nation's fastest 3G network, so you can download faster on your smartphone than Verizon.
With 4G from Sprint, I can download files up to 10 times faster than 3G.
Upload 10 photos in a minute. Verizon 4G LTE.
Get ready for more ads like those. The wireless industry is in a race to roll out 5G service. Now, 5G is supposed to be up to 100 times faster than current data speeds. Could have used it on Amtrak yesterday. But it requires cell phone tower equipment to be closer to users than ever before. And that is causing outrage and alarm in some neighborhoods as antennas go up around the homes. Tony DeCoppola is here with both sides of the conversation. Tony, lots of chatter about this. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. There's outrage, but there's also excitement. I mean, 100 times faster. But get this, wireless companies in the U.S. say they'll have to install about 300,000 new antennas for the rollout of 5G. That is roughly equal to the total number of cell phone towers built over the past 3 decades. The faster network could create new potential for work and play, but it's also leading to new concerns. Go.
At a lab in New York, Verizon invited us to meet some of the entrepreneurs developing tools to run on the next generation of wireless technology.
How important is 5G to your mission?
5G is extremely important.
Jonathan Reeves demonstrated his product, Arvisio.
As you move around, the object stays fixed in space.
Look at that. That's amazing.
Allowing users in different locations to interact with 3D images projected through a lens.
Today we can do this using Wi-Fi technology, and we can do it using landline technology, but of course you're then tied to particular locations. With 5G now we can begin to extend this, so we can actually begin to start doing this on building sites. We can start doing it on the factory floor. So it really opens up a whole new world.
But before this world can become reality, this one needs to change. 5G requires the installation of new equipment across the U.S.
So this pole here is 5G. This is the future right here.
You got it.
Every wireless company is working to build its own 5G network. Melissa Arnoldi leads AT&T's efforts.
If you don't already have one of these in your neighborhood, they're coming.
That's absolutely right. They're coming.
She says 5G uses high-frequency waves that support faster speeds, but don't travel as far as current wireless frequencies. So instead of relying on large cell phone towers spread far apart, they need small cell sites that are much closer together.
We're going to use our existing infrastructure today, whether it's light poles, whether it's street lights. We're going to make sure that we don't make it obtrusive to our customers and to the citizens.
Yet some don't share the enthusiasm.
The cell towers are called small cell towers, but they're not so small when they're in your front yard.
Donna Barron is protesting plans to convert light poles in her Montgomery County, Maryland neighborhood into small cell sites.
This will cause cancer.
She was one of several people who raised health concerns at a government hearing last month.
This stuff is untested on kids. Their safety is not certain.
These untested technologies are, at this time, not ready to be unleashed into our lives.
Cell phone equipment emits radiation, but research on its health effects has been inconsistent. According to the National Cancer Institute, a limited number of studies have shown some evidence of statistical association of cell phone use and brain tumor risks. But most studies have found no association.
If you lose this fight and a pole goes in right here, are you going to move?
Possibly.
Either way, Barron says she fears property values could plummet when 5G equipment pops up.
If a tower goes up right there, what's going to happen to the value of that home?
It could drop 20%.
And not only for this house.
Right, for that house, that house, that house. And then pretty soon you go around the curve and there's another cell tower. They're all through this neighborhood. So it's going to devastate the neighborhood.
Arnoldi insists her workers are focused on safety, pointing out they live and work near this equipment too.
Do you have any 5G antennae in your neighborhood yet?
No, not yet. I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting for it. It's coming soon, though. It's coming soon.
So I'm guessing from that reaction, then you're very comfortable with it rolling out in your neck of the woods.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, look, this is our...
Wireless carriers have announced plans to roll out 5G service to a handful of cities later this year, but don't get too excited. To really take advantage, you'll need a 5G-enabled device, which probably won't be available until next year.
So our current phones aren't 5G ready?
They're not 5G ready. The pole outside your house might be 5G ready, but your phone is not.
Yeah, it's going to have to upgrade. Tony, thanks.
So artificial intelligence is the study of how to make machines behave intelligently, which means acting in a way that will achieve the objectives that they've been given. And recently I've become concerned about the use of AI to kill people.
Stuart Russell. He was an early pioneer in artificial intelligence. He's also been warning people about its potential danger for years.
So a killer robot is something that locates selects and attacks human targets.
Stuart isn't so worried about robots like this. We're still pretty far from the Terminator. But Stuart says we're not as far from something like this bee-sized drone. He imagined one and made a movie that he hopes will freak you out. In Stuart's movie, we see swarms of them armed with explosives set loose on their targets.
The main issue is you're creating a class of weapons of mass destruction, which can kill millions of people just like a nuclear weapon. But in fact, it's much easier to build, much cheaper, much more scalable, in that you can use 1 or 10 or 100 or 1,000 or 10,000. Whereas with a nuclear weapon, it's sort of all or nothing. It doesn't destroy the city and the country that you're attacking. It just kills all the people you want to kill. All males between 12 and 60, or all males wearing a yarmulke in Israel.
The weapon Stuart's describing is terrifying if it works perfectly. With the current state of tech, many experts say it wouldn't. But that could be even scarier.
The way we think about AI is we build a machine and we put the objective into the machine and the machine pursues the objective. So you put in the objective of find a cure for cancer as quickly as possible. Sounds great, right? Okay, well, probably the fastest way to do that is to induce tumors in the entire human population and then try millions of different treatments simultaneously. Then that's the quickest way to find a cure. That's not what you meant, but that's what you asked for. So we call this the King Midas problem. King Midas said, I want everything I touch to turn to gold, and he got his wish, and then his food turned to gold, and his drink turned to gold, and his family turned to gold, and died in misery and starvation. This is a very old story. We are unable to correctly specify the objective.
Machines will always be limited by the minds of those who made them. We aren't perfect, and neither is our AI. Facial recognition software has had trouble with dark skin. Self-driving vehicles still need good weather and calm streets to work safely. We don't know how long it will take for researchers to create weapons with that kind of flexibility. But behind closed doors, defense labs are working on it, and they're not working alone.
Militaries don't have to invent AI. It's already being built. It's being driven by major tech companies out in the commercial sector.
Paul Shari here led a Department of Defense working group that helped establish DoD policies on AI and weapon systems for the U.S. military.
The reality is all of the technology to put this together, to build weapons that can go out on their own, make their own decisions to kill human beings, exists today.
But it's one thing to assemble a weapon in a lab, and another to have it work in any environment. And war is messy.
Machines are not really at a point today where they're capable of flexibly adapting to novel situations, and that's a major vulnerability in war.
Governments around the world see potential advantages in these weapons. After all, human soldiers, they get tired, emotional, they miss targets. Humans get traumatized. Machines do not. They can react at machine speed. If a missile was coming at you, how quickly would you want to know? Autonomous weapons could save lives.
The same technology that will help self-driving cars avoid pedestrians could be used to target civilians or avoid them intentionally.
The problem is, we've gotten this wrong before.
To really understand the growing trends of automation in weapons that have been going for decades, you have to go all the way back to the American Civil War, to the Gatling gun. How would I describe a Gatling gun? Do I have to describe it? Could you guys show a picture of it? Richard Gatling was looking at all of the horrors that were coming back from the Civil War, and he wanted to find a way to make war more humane, to reduce the number of people that are needed on the battlefield. Wouldn't that be amazing?
4 people operating Gatling's gun could fire the equivalent of 100 soldiers. Far less people would be needed on the battlefield. It was the precursor to the machine gun, and it was born with the intention to save lives. At least for the army that had the gun. Of course,
the reality was far, far different. Gatling's invention had the very opposite effect of what he intended, and then it magnified the killing and destruction on the battlefield by orders of magnitude.
Gatling was wrong. Automating weapons didn't save lives. And Dmitry here is saying something eerily familiar over 150 years later.
Она одна решает задачи, которые бы решали 30 человек.
And it wasn't just Gatling. Revolutions of warfare have typically not gone well.
Before we ever developed usable biological weapons, the biologists said, stop doing this.
All civilized countries today have given up chemical weapons as tools of warfare. But we see that they are still used by some rogue nations.
And then there are nuclear weapons. Even with multiple treaties in place to police their use, the threat of nuclear obliteration remains a global anxiety.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Early in the war in Afghanistan, I was part of a Ranger sniper team that was sent out to the Afghanistan-Pakistan border to watch infiltration routes for foreign fighters coming across the border. We drove all night and then began to hike up a steep, rocky mountain under cover of darkness. From our position on the ridgeline, we could see for dozens of miles in every direction. And by the time the sun came up, we looked down at this compound beneath us. We were basically in someone's backyard. We were certain that people would be coming to take a closer look at us. What I didn't anticipate was that they'd send a little girl to scout out our position. She wasn't particularly sneaky, to be honest. She was reporting back our position, probably how many of us there were. We watched her, she watched us, and then she left, and pretty soon after, the Taliban fighters came. The gunfight that ensued brought out the whole village. And we knew that many, many more fighters would be coming before long. So we had to leave that position as we were compromised. Later on in the day, we talked about what we would do in a similar situation to that. Now, one of the things that never came up was the idea of shooting this little girl. But here's the thing. She was a valid enemy combatant, and killing her would have been lawful. So if someone deployed an autonomous weapon, a robot that was designed to perfectly follow the laws of war, it would have killed this little girl in that situation. Now, I think that would have been wrong. Maybe not legally, but morally. But how would a robot know the difference between what's legal and what's right?
With so much at stake, you'd think a debate would be happening. Well, there is. It's just that technology moves at a different pace than diplomacy.
We will continue our discussion on Agenda Item 6A, characterization of the systems under consideration, in order to promote a common understanding on concepts and characteristics relevant to the objectives and purposes of the Convention.
One of the things I learned very quickly was that the official proceedings in the United Nations appear to be completely meaningless.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
Support continued deliberations.
To stay within the normative framework.
Ces discussions sont complexes.
In interpretation,
the words between
of a multidisciplinary
down the rabbit hole of endless discussions on subjective notions.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are not in a position to make a declaration right now.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you feeling?
Oh, I'm fine. Except for the governments, you know. But their do-nothing attitude.
We'd like to hear about that.
Jody Williams here won a Nobel Peace Prize for her work banning landmines. Now, she is part of the campaign to stop killer robots.
Academics attacked the campaign in the beginning years, you know, saying robotics and AI are inevitable. Maybe they are. But applying them to killing human beings on their own is not inevitable unless you do nothing, and we refuse to do nothing.
Today, the Campaign to Stop Killer Robots is staging a protest outside of the UN. The group is made up of activists, nonprofits, and civil society organizations. The campaign's goal? A ban on all weapons that can target and kill on their own. So far, 30 countries have joined them in supporting a ban, as well as 100 non-governmental organizations, the European Parliament, 21 Nobel laureates, and leading scientists like Stephen Hawking, Noam Chomsky, and Elon Musk, as well as Stuart Russell and more than 4,500 other AI researchers.
Everyone, keep it up now.
I like dying.
Jody's here with Mary Wareham.
So this is the sixth time that governments have come together since 2014 to talk about what they call lethal autonomous weapon systems.
We're going to apologize in advance for the obtuse use of acronyms in this portion of the video.
We're not trying to prohibit the use of artificial intelligence. You know, it can be beneficial to humanity. We're pro-robots. We're just anti-killer robots, anti-fully autonomous weapons.
The CCW, the Forum of the Convention for Conventional Weapons, which actually has a name this long, and I can never remember it, operates by consensus, which means you either negotiate the lowest common denominator, which means doing pretty much nothing, or if the entire room of diplomats wants to move forward with a treaty, for example, and one state says no, then it goes nowhere. And that's really a dictatorship by one.
Once a bullet leaves a gun, the rifleman ceases to have control over that bullet. Autonomy is a way of extending human control beyond the time a munition is deployed.
That's the United States arguing that AI will save lives. And remember, without their support, any kind of regulation can't move forward.
Using algorithm and software to determine and engage targets reduces people to objects.
Estamos claros que un país en desarrollo no tiene la tecnología que estamos discutiendo aquí hoy. ¿Cómo nos vamos a defender?
In the U.S. perspective, there is nothing intrinsically valuable about manually operating a weapon system as opposed to operating it with an autonomous function.
The United States isn't alone. The countries working hardest to build autonomous weapons insist we can't regulate what doesn't exist yet. And at the same time, their militaries are developing these weapons right now.
Полагают, что САС в настоящее время нет, и их создание – это вопрос будущего.
中方认为 ，LOS 应被理解为全自主致命武器系统，目前尚不存在。
The line between a semi-autonomous weapon that has a human in control and a fully autonomous weapon could simply be a software patch.
Indeed, some may say it is similar to trying to discuss the internet in the 80s, 70s, 60s. At this stage,
it is not necessary or desirable at this time to define laws.
This so-called difficulty of definitions continues to be willful obfuscation.
The truth is, whether they exist or not just depends on how you define them. We don't have weapons with artificial general intelligence, or AI that's as smart as humans. But we do already have weapons that can use AI to search, select, and engage targets in specific situations. And the technology is only getting better.
So it could easily take another 10 years before they even agree on a definition of what an autonomous weapon is. And by that time, it'll be too late. I think for some countries, that's the point.
In the ongoing race between technology and diplomacy, technology is winning. Because in this race, the dual-use nature of technology means software being designed to make your life easier clearly has military applications.
The AI community, myself included, we were sort of asleep at the wheel for a long time. And we weren't really thinking about the ways that it could be misused.
Whether we like it or not, we've entered the age of the algorithm, and AI is changing our place on the battlefield. Is it possible the next generation of soldiers won't have to kill?
Look, it's an appealing idea that someday robots will just fight other robots and no one will get hurt. I don't think that's realistic.
Unfortunately, if it worked like that, we could just say, well, why don't we just play baseball and decide who wins, or tiddlywinks. No country is going to surrender until the costs that they've incurred are unbearable.
The man in this photo is Eagles equipment manager Tony Daisner. Alu's representative said that Alu felt like he had no choice.
Accusations of racism swirling around their head coach.
Stuff you big and like yelling like you baboon.
Fans were repeatedly shouting the word basketball at him
as racist fans targeted him and his family, bringing shame to the league and sending waves of shock and anger across the athletic world.
Deep down inside, I mean, I'm a black player playing a white man's game.
Wayne Simmons was on the ice for a shootout in London when a fan threw a banana peel on the ice.
I was just looking at them the entire time, and at one point even like I was in the penalty box and I had to like put my shirt over my face because I was like almost crying.
Hockey has a racism problem. It is something the sport has not combated and fought to change. Unfortunately, we have seen these stories over and over and over again. And now we have another tale of New York Rangers draftee Keandre Miller. A selection in 2018, the Rangers organized a Zoom chat with Miller and fans. The problem then ensued and led many team employees to scramble. Here is a screen grab, just a small sample of what the Rangers and Miller saw with their own two eyes. Racial slurs all the time on this chat. The video was taken by Alex Farias, who participated in the live Q&A. She spoke with the New York Times and she said, "You could see in the video that I posted, he sees it when he looks down," she said of Miller. The Rangers eventually disabled the chat feature that displayed fans' questions, but the damage was done. The NHL has been reeling since December when former player Akim Aliyu said enough is enough and outed former coach Bill Peters, a former coach of his in the Blackhawks' developmental program and of the Calgary Flames. In 2011, Aliyu, with the developmental Colorado Eagles, was asked to attend a party later than everyone else so he could be surprised by equipment manager Tony Denzer dressed in Aliyu's jersey with blackface. Aliyu would say, "I believe the time for big positive change in the sport has arrived and that this moment can be used to promote diversity, inclusiveness, and safety in the sport and our community." In that December meeting, NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman invited Aliyu to meet with him. Soon thereafter, the league announced policy changes, including the introduction of mandatory training programs on diversity and the creation of a whistleblower hotline for people to anonymously report issues. Yet here we are. Renee Hess, founder of the Black Girl Hockey Club, argued the team should have anticipated racially driven comments, given the racism that fans of color have experienced in hockey spaces and a recent explosion of targeted hacks on Zoom. With Miller's chat, Hess said, "That person is 100% a hockey fan because we encounter these types of attitudes all across the hockey fandom," she said. Her statements are backed up by current and former players. "It starts really early," said Aliyu. "With parents, I had a couple of incidents where people would yell racial swears while I was playing. I was old enough to understand exactly what was being said. Racism knows no age limits. Ask Divine Apollon, just 13 years old, who experienced it firsthand. He had to endure monkey chants from an opposing team. Take Ty Cornette, another example, who dealt with opponents beating their chests and, according to The Athletic, acted like gorillas every time he lined up in front of an opponent's bench. He was called the N-word and told, 'I'm going to lynch you, N-word.' Cornette, like Apollon, is just 13 years old." Miller's teammate Jacob Trouba wrote on Twitter, "What happened today was inexcusable and cowardly."
Psalm 118. Psalm 118. O give thanks unto YAHAWAH, for he is good, because his mercy endureth forever. Let Israel now say that his mercy endureth forever. Let the house of Aaron now say that his mercy endureth forever. Let them now that fear YAHAWAH say that his mercy endureth forever. I called upon YAHAWAH ALAHYAM in distress. YAHAWAH ALAHYAM answered me and set me in a large place. YAHAWAH is on my side. I will not fear what man can do unto me. YAHAWAH taketh my part with them that help me. Therefore shall I see my desire upon them that hate me. It is better to trust in YAHAWAH ALAHYAM than to put confidence in man. It is better to trust in YAHAWAH ALAHYAM than to put confidence in princes. All nations compass me about, but in the name of YAHAWAH ALAHYAM I will destroy them. Let me repeat that again. All nations compass me about, but BaHaShem, YAHAWAH ALAHYAM, I will destroy them. They compass me about, yea, they compass me about, but BaHaShem, YAHAWAH ALAHYAM, I will destroy them. They compass me about like bees. They are quenched as the fire of thorns. For BaHaShem, YAHAWAH ALAHYAM, I will destroy them. Thou hast thrust sore at me, that I might fall. But YAHAWAH ALAHYAM, help me. YAHAWAH ALAHYAM is my salvation and song, and is become my salvation. YAHAWAH ALAHYAM is my strength and song, and is become my salvation. The voice of rejoicing and salvation is in the tabernacles of the righteous. The right hand of YAHAWAH doeth valiantly. The right hand of YAHAWAH is exalted. The right hand of YAHAWAH doeth valiantly. I shall not die, but live, and declare the works of YAHAWAH. YAHAWAH hath chastened me sore, but he hath not given me over unto death. Open to me the gates of righteousness. I will go into them, and I will praise YAHAWAH. This gate of YAHAWAH, into which the righteousness shall enter. I will praise thee, for thou hast heard me, and art become my salvation. The stone which the builders refuse is become the headstone of the corner. This is YAHAWAH's doing. It is marvelous in our eyes. This is the day which YAHAWAH ALAHYAM has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. We will rejoice and be glad in it. Let me read that 24th verse again. This is the day which YAHAWAH ALAHYAM has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. The we are Hebrew Israelites, Negroes. Repent and rejoice and be glad in this day, every day of your lives. Save now, I beseech thee, O YAHAWAH, O YAHAWAH, I beseech thee. Send now prosperity. Send now prosperity. Yes, we can teach and preach to send on prosperity after we repent, after we rejoice and be glad in the days that we have, after we call upon YAHAWAH ALAHYAM's name, after we declare victory over this enemy even while in the midst of this battle. All we have to do is say BaHaShem YAHAWAH ALAHYAM. That just means in the name of YAHAWAH, our gods. We have our gods, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. BaHaShem YAHAWAH ALAHYAM. BaHaShem YAHWAH Shai HaMashiach. YAHWAH Shai HaMashiach is Jesus Christ. So after we command ourselves to fall in order, fall in line with YAHWAH Shai HaMashiach, with YAHAWAH ALAHYAM, then we can say, save now, I beseech thee, O YAHAWAH. O YAHAWAH, I beseech thee, send now prosperity. Blessed be he that cometh BaHaShem YAHAWAH. We have blessed you out of the house of YAHAWAH. YAHAWAH is our ALAHYAM, which hath shown us light. Bind the sacrifice with cords, even unto the horns of the altar. Thou art my YAHAWAH ALAHYAM, and I will praise thee. Thou art my YAHAWAH ALAHYAM, I will exalt thee. Oh, give thanks. Thawada Rabbah means thank you very much. It means to give thanks unto YAHAWAH, or unto whom you are appreciating. Thawada Rabbah YAHAWAH ALAHYAM, for he is good. Hallelujah. Tawab Yah. Tawab means good. Yah means Yahawah is good. Tawab Yah. For his mercy endureth forever. LAHYAM. Shalom, shalawam. Thank you for tuning in. Be blessed.